welcome back to another video. Today I am going to be showing you some Thanksgiving desserts. All of my links for these desserts will be down below, as well as the playlist of the collab that I am doing. There is a bunch of us who are actually making all of these Thanksgiving desserts, and so I wanted to be able to make sure that I have the playlist down below so that way you can go check out theirs, because they have some really wonderful ideas, and I wanted to be able to let you guys know that, so that way you would be able to also check out and have other plans for Thanksgiving. So all of those will be down below. Today we're going to be starting at the grocery store, and I am bringing this coffee along with me because you always need to start off any sort of dessert, cooking, cleaning, planning, whatever, with some coffee. And now we're at the good old H-E-B. If you don't have an H-E-B, which I know a lot of people have actually said, like, what's an H-E-B? It's a really amazing grocery store in Texas, and if you guys don't have one, I'm so sorry. I used to work there. But we had to go get some groceries, so I got all the groceries for the week, plus what I needed for Thanksgiving and for these recipes, so that's all right here. And so I just bring them all in and I start getting everything washed up. This is one of the things that you can use instead of regular apples, is those Fuji apples, but I'm using walnuts, pecans, and almonds and some of the things as well. Those are just 3 different options for you to have for this recipe. But I had some old apples, sorry, that was so hard for me to figure out, apples, and I started to cut them up, and this recipe is honestly best with older apples. I mentioned that in my blog post, and I'm starting to make the filling for all of my recipes. The filling is actually something that I created for my son because I wanted to make him some applesauce, and all the ones that I saw in the grocery store I didn't really like, so I just kind of came up with this recipe on my own with whole food products, and it was a hit with him. He absolutely loved it. And so then I decided, you know what, I'm going to change some of the seasoning up to where I can also use it for Thanksgiving. So that's what this is. This is Thanksgiving applesauce, all-purpose apple filling, basically. So I will be sharing that with you, but I'm just dicing up all of these apples and getting everything set up to where I can start this recipe. The other thing I wanted to mention is the apple cores. These apple cores you can actually make into apple cider vinegar. If you go on Pinterest, you can make your own apple cider vinegar after, using these. I have not actually done that in a really long time because we still have some, but I was easily able to make it, and I made it all the time, multiple batches, using the recipe that I will have, and I will link that down below as well in my description box, because it is super easy and way more delicious tasting making it from scratch, and it just is super easy to make. Even if you do work out of the home, it helps a lot. So I will leave that down below, but that's something you can do for apple cores, or you can save the apple cores and you can put it in roast. You can put it in soups, any sort of things like that. Roasts are my favorite way to use apple cores. It brings just like the tiniest bit of sweetness. So don't throw away your apple cores is basically what I'm saying. Put them in a freezer bag or a plastic bag and just put it in the freezer and leave it there until you need it for a soup, a roast, or some sort of apple core recipe. Or you can even put it in vinegar and put some cinnamon in it and have an apple cinnamon scent all-purpose cleaner. There are so many different ways to use all of the food that you make, and so there's a bunch of different ways to do that, and so it's more of a fall scented all-purpose cleaner as well, because they do have some where you would do that with lemon peels or citrus peels, and then also helps with cleaning as well. I've done all this, and so I have a test of time, but I added pumpkin spice seasoning to the top of this, the apples, as well as some maple syrup, and I let it cook, and I added some water, and so that's what it looks like right now. And so I'm just going to leave it in there and let it cook almost all day. It takes a while because I don't take off the peels, I leave them on. Then this is my pie crust that I had already made in the freezer, and I will leave my link down for my recipe down below. But I have that because that calls for one of the recipes. This dough I actually made, and this is my cinnamon roll dough. I also have a recipe for that, and so I will link that. And I just rolled it all out, as you can tell. And it's starting to be made into cinnamon rolls. But you can tell it's kind of thicker because I like it that way because it makes it really fluffy. So this is what it looks like after about 6 to 8 hours cooking, and I'm just mashing it. If I was going to make applesauce, I would actually put it in the food processor. I've got a recipe for this too and everything on how I do it, and I will link that down below too on my blog. But right now I'm just mashing everything and mixing it up, trying to get it all broken up. And then I take out the portions that I want for applesauce and for other fillings and other recipes, and I put them in these containers and I let them cool. The next thing I do is make the cinnamon roll filling, which is what we're going to be doing in just a minute. I leave a little bit, like this much in the crock pot for the cinnamon roll filling, so that way all the other ingredients I add to it will melt because it's hot. So I added butter. This is about, I don't know how much butter. I always eyeball it, and so I'll have my exact recipe down below so that way you guys can see that. But you add butter, and then I started to add some brown sugar to this recipe because it doesn't have any in the apple filling. So I just added some cinnamon, some additional cinnamon, some brown sugar, and butter. And I left it in the crock pot. The crock pot is turned off right now, but I left it in there. And then I also added walnuts to half of them. My husband does not like walnuts, but I love walnuts. So I added it to have the cinnamon rolls, but not the rest. And right now I'm just breaking up some of the brown sugar bits and just mixing, and just getting it all blended in to where it's going to be like this nice, soft, gooey material. Is material the right word? Consistency. Not material. Alright, so this is my dough laid out, and I'm going to start adding the filling into the cinnamon rolls. Guys, I'm not kidding you, this cinnamon roll recipe is so good. I got the idea off of Pinterest, but I used my own ingredients. So I will leave the Pinterest recipe down below that you can follow yourself. But this I used using my own pie crust recipe and filling and stuff like that. So that's kind of where I made it my own. But I also used that recipe for inspiration. And man, is this good. I'm also holding my son with one hand, so you can also do this one-handed. So if you're a mom, this is a very easy recipe to make as well. So I am just spooning it onto the crust. I guess it would be a crust for cinnamon roll, right? And I'm starting to peel it up and roll it into the actual roll, hence why it's called cinnamon roll. I don't know if anyone just was like, oh my gosh, that makes so much sense, or they were like, duh, Cassidy, like, stop being dumb. But I just roll it all together, and it will, as you see, ooze out. I added a lot, and it's really good that way. So that's what it looks like. And then I wash my hands and I come back and I will start to cut the cinnamon rolls into like larger chunks. I will start cutting it using a butter knife. I find that this works the best, and I will just leave it there to cut into even chunks. I would say they're about 1 inch to 1.5 inches. That's where I found that I like the best, and where they can have the most filling but still be really good. So that's what this looks like. They did not look super pretty, but that's because there was so much filling on there, and then I just spooned some more filling on top. So that way on the bottom it was like super gooey and delicious. And then I just let them sit in these containers that are pretty much you can throw them away or you can keep them and wash them, but I'm just letting them rise, and I'm putting the lids on them so that way they do rise. And my son actually did that where he like made a close-up because he saw my camera and he started doing all this. So this is Jace's camera as well. And then I started rolling out the pie crust. And so I used a shot glass, but you can use something else. I just had a shot glass lying around in the house, so I decided that I would just use that to make these small little discs. You can also use biscuit cutters if you have that too. That's what I think I'll use next time because that worked a lot better than the shot glass. So I would recommend if you have a biscuit cutter, use that. Because they do taste better if they are bigger. But these are the small ones, and that's me chasing after my son, trying to pick him up because he has something in his mouth that he should not have. And then I come back and resume cooking. But I just mash down the little discs until they're a lot thinner. So I did that with all of them. And then now I'm just spooning on the filling, the apple pie filling. It is absolutely delicious. This is straight out of the crock pot, so nothing was added to it like the cinnamon rolls were. This is just straight out of the crock pot, and I put that on each or half of the discs because the other ones are going to be the lids, basically. You see what I'm saying right now? I'm putting the tops on the pie discs. You're supposed to be making these into balls, but I did not make them into balls. And you can also air fry these, which they taste way better air fried. So I put them in the oven in this video to see what they would be like, but I highly recommend the air fryer because the next day we actually used and tried more of these in the air fryer, and man, were they delicious. So highly recommend that. And then I wanted to start making them into more like ball looking texture, so I just made sure that all the edges were sealed together, and then I made them into like little balls because it was a lot easier that way. You can also use Pillsbury pie crust. That would be a lot easier than making your own. I just happen to have my own pie filling and pie crust recipe, so I just made my own. But if you are pinched for time, that's a really good thing to do. Then with these little discs, you're gonna make cinnamon sugar. I put pumpkin pie spice and sugar together, and I just rolled them in that mixture. So that's what they look like after they are all rolled in the mixture. And then I get everything set up for them to be in the oven, and then I leave them in the oven for a while, and then they're cooked, and this is what they look like after they are cooked and everything like that. This is me just taking them out of the oven. Again, these cinnamon rolls, man, they were so good. So good. Now I'm making the icing. The icing is something that actually is really easy to make. I never had any on hand, but so I just made my own cream cheese icing. I do have a recipe for it, but I just followed a recipe off Pinterest because I had all the ingredients on hand with this particular recipe, but I just took cream cheese, butter, milk, and powdered sugar and made my own cream cheese icing that way. It is way easier to have a hand mixer to do this recipe, but I did not have a hand mixer / do not have a hand mixer. It's in storage, so I just did it by hand, which was a lot harder. So if you have a hand mixer, go ahead and mix all these ingredients together. But yeah, that's pretty much what I did. Again, I eyeballed a lot of it. I did follow a recipe on Pinterest, but I kind of just eyeballed it all until it made sense for me, and it was to where I liked it to taste. So I mixed all of these things together, and then I put it in the microwave. This is me getting it out of the microwave, and I'm just kind of mixing it, trying to get all the clumps out. And then this is like a little hack I have, but all your shaker cups, use them for mixing up eggs or whisking eggs or mixing up anything like this where it needs to be whisked. This is a really easy way to whisk. And then after that, I pour it right on the cinnamon rolls. Again, these are fresh out the oven, and I put this icing on it right after that. And it was so good. So good. And then I put the lids on everything and placed it in the fridge. And now this is literally evidence that it was that good. My husband already ate it the moment that we got out of the fridge. So thank you guys so much for watching, and I hope you have a great day. Bye.